the network. That's called the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. And it's going to be about 8 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Mountain, 10 o'clock Central, and 11 o'clock Eastern Time. And you can find out all the scheduling and all the information on how to contact me, as well as be a guest on the show and listen to the archives and everything on thegalacticconnection.com. One thing I want to mention real quick is before the show, you have to, if you want to listen to a live show, you have to get the PalTalk Messenger, and it's really quick to download, and all the information's on the website on how to do it. And you basically go in and you can choose two options, one that gives you free software with it, and if you don't want that, just look below it and you'll have the option just to get the Messenger. Once you get the Messenger and set up everything, and it's a really quick setup, you find the room, and it says how to do that on the website. Find the room and add to favorites, and you never have to look for it again. And every time that you want to listen to any of the network shows, you just open up your PalTalk Messenger and you click on the room, and every show's there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Psychic Medium Christopher George, and I have a new show that will air the first Friday of every month from 11 to midnight Eastern Standard Time. The show is called Insight with Psychic Medium Christopher George, all about psychic readings. I welcome my listeners to call in for a free reading. Just remember, don't ask me a question that you really don't want the answer to. I'll give it to you the way the spirits give it to me. Straightforward and real. The first Friday of every month. Insight, 11 to midnight.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Light up your night with the Kevin Smith Show. Hi, this is Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Paranormal Radio.
Show coming at you live from Florida and Indiana.
Awesome.
I'm summoning forth my co-host tonight, Beelzebub, Alzarad, from the Necronomicon. I had to summon him forth. You know, I like to do rotating co-hosts since I fired my co-host last year, and ratings have doubled since I fired Guy Weddle for being an asshole to people. But now we rotate co-host, and ratings are doing great. And tonight it's Beelzebub.
Good evening.
I summoned him forth. He's here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
And good to be here. Good to have you here. It's been a long week on my end, but I'm here. I scraped myself up, and here I am. We're running a little bit behind from the wonderful, our friends at News at the Flip Side, which I lovingly call Bill O'Reilly on crack. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
He's just playing.
Hey, just joshing. But no, I don't even want to discuss politics on my show. Everyone knows I'm voting for Obama. I'll just briefly say my political stuff. I think they're all corrupt as hell, but I would run off my foot and vote for Romney. That's just all I'm going to say. So I'm voting for Obama. But nonetheless, I would rather have Vlad the Impaler than Obama or Romney personally as president. But that's just me, and that was my dark side.
At least he was proactive and got the job done, you know?
Yeah, my thing with Obama is the insurance thing. Yeah, it's not perfect, but at least they're trying to give some kind of insurance. I'm a cancer survivor. I told my story before when I went through chemo when I was 17. My father, the company told him that I cost too much and he needed to cut my chemo and let me die. So my dad had a heart attack on his way to his job, filled with a truck full of guns and knives. He was going to shoot the place up, and he's never done anything like that in his life. He died before he got there from a heart attack. So that's my story, and that's why I'm for Obama. Insurance, baby. But I do think they're all corrupt, and America needs an enema. And I don't think anything's going to change in America unless there's an extinction level event or some kind of alien reckoning from beyond. And still waiting on that one. Or a revolution of Braveheart-like proportions, like William Wallace kind of stuff. Other than that, it feels pretty hopeless to me in America. So, nonetheless, let's get to our guest since we're going to make up time at the end. So, we got that. Let's get to our guest. We have a very fascinating guest from North Atlantic Books, the Volver editions. We've been working with them, and who's next? Oh, next Saturday, Ross Hamilton on Star Mounds and Serpent Mounds. Jerry Avalos will be co-hosting. So we have Jonathan Talat Phillips. Jonathan, am I saying your middle name right? Because I'm from Georgia, so correctly say it for me once, please.
Yeah, Jeffrey, it's nice to be on here. Vizal, nice to meet you, too. It's Talat, and it's a Sufi name. It means the rising sun, and that's what I go by professionally, just as what people call me. So if you call me Talat, that would be great. T-A-L-A-T.
Cool.
All right.
It's unique. I like it. But okay, Jonathan. Well, I have your book here, Electric Jesus. I've been reading it. I love it. It's a great book. And I want to get into Gnosticism. Like I told you in email before, many people have said some of my beliefs seem like they're Gnostic. I really don't know a lot about the Gnostic perspective at all. Like, I know a little bit from reading your book, and I even tried to look up a little bit online, but I was just like, I'm just going to wait until we talk to Jonathan so he can maybe explain it. So it'll be, so I can understand it a bit more. If you could, what exactly is the Gnostic perspective? Could you tell us that?
Wow. Sure. I mean,
summarize it maybe.
I mean, I almost think, Jeffery, what would be a good entry point is, since you were talking about politics, is maybe start from there. How far along did you get in the book, just so I have a reference point?
There's like 3 chapters left to read.
Okay, and I've
only done some loose research on what you're talking about, but I'm familiarized with some of the concepts that you're writing about.
Well, but I want to say, before we even jump into Gnosticism, I didn't believe in any of this stuff. I did not have a spiritual perspective, really. I was a political activist, and all I wanted to do was to get George Bush to have him lose that second election. And I spent of my life working my ass off to try to make that happen as a media activist. And so when he won that election, some people think he stole it. I actually think he won it, which was even more depressing because it meant the country voted for a guy that lied to us to bring us into extremely devastating war. So anyway, after that, I couldn't leave bed for 2 weeks. I was just depressed and looking at the planetary situation. It's funny. I feel like Jeffrey was describing, like, there has to be some mass extinction thing to happen, or like Braveheart revolution. Like, if you just look at the titanic things we're facing in the current paradigm, we're screwed. I just don't think there's a way out of it.
Yeah, there's no real practical way to shift anything to make everything make sense, because everything's in such a state of flux.
Yeah, well, and it's overwhelming. How do we address 3 species dying every hour on this planet? Global warming on such a catastrophic scale, and no one admitted exists right now. So I was just looking at the situation, and it seemed way bigger than Democrat or Republican, and that what we needed was some type of paradigm shift. And that Chinese curse me, you get what you wish for.
Right.
That happened to me on my 30th birthday. My girlfriend at the time, this is giving the spiritual entry point, because I was so desperate. I feel like this is often how people get into spirituality, is they're suffering, they're going through the dark night of the soul, and then somehow the light comes in. Right. And the light to me was a total surprise. I was doing all this research for paradigm shift and that, and my girlfriend at the time, she calls me up and says, "You've been stressed about this for months. You need to get your butt on the dance floor and take some MDMA." And for people that don't know, that is very pure ecstasy, like therapeutic grade. They are now actually using MDMA to help quite successfully Iraq war veterans overcome PTSD.
Right. And that's some pretty good advice from your girlfriend.
It was amazing advice, because it got me out of my head, it got me into my heart, and I connected with this community around. Right. And suddenly, this series of synchronicities just lined up, like one after the other, to the point where I was in bed that night and thinking, wow, the universe is very different than I thought it was. And at that point, I felt this presence come to me. And when it left, the lights turned on. Suddenly, I could see auras. I call them energy fields. To me, auras are a little woo-woo. I could see it around everything, and I saw that no longer I didn't see that we were separate beings. Like, we were all interconnected energetically, which in New York, where I live, can be a little disturbing on a subway.
Right.
And so that opened up my spiritual perspective, and I actually, I was very confused, and then I saw this picture of Jesus with an energy field around him, and I remember saying to myself, oh my God, halos really do exist. And that's when I started studying early Christianity and finding out it was so different, very diverse, rich, mystery schools, and that's all been lost through, I describe in the book, the electric, all sorts of pretty awful and violent political power moves.
Yeah, it seems like everything was warped to serve the people of the time instead of what the original concepts were supposed to be.
Yeah, I think what it was is they took a message of the light and then used it for egoic purposes. And so a lot of my study, and I think this is something that makes the book very unique, is it's a study how early Christians were using spiritual energy for the transformation of consciousness. And you see this in pretty much every mystical and shamanic culture around the planet. They have different names for spiritual energy: chi, ki, ruah, and prana. In the Christians, they would have called it pneuma, spiritual breath, spiritual energy. The study of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is called pneumatology. And there's all these lines of the power draining out of Jesus and healing these people. So, do you guys know Reiki, what that is?
I'm familiar with some people who practice that or who say that they're Reiki masters, but I've never participated in any of those things.
Well, like, I've found that Reiki healers, they're pretty crazy about Jesus. And why? He was going around doing what they do. He was the ORM, I call him, the original Reiki master. And, you'll see it in those paintings. Just look at him. He's healing through energy. And then so I looked into the Gnostics, Right. And, I really want to say Gnosticism is a kind of 20th century academic label, and I'm not actually very cool with a separation between Christians and Gnostics, because I believe the early Christians were Gnostics. They were, they had created initiatory processes which are very similar to other mystery schools in the Mediterranean to use that energy for the evolution of consciousness and healing. And so those would have been things like a Eucharist, a baptism, the death and rebirth ritual. And then the highest one of all was called the bridal chamber, which I believe was the opening of the heart chakra and the integrating of opposite energies, seemingly polar energies like good and evil, right and left, masculine and feminine.
So it's kind of dichotomies or just polar opposites.
Yeah, and then suddenly you're into more of a divine consciousness because you see the wholeness of everything instead of the illusion of separation. And that's what the Gnostics would say is this whole world is illusion.
Yeah.
They do have a certain, you guys probably heard of this, like there's certain cosmologies in certain Gnostic texts that people are very interested in. A lot of it's around the archons, which are these, kind of the Old Testament God is called this demiurge. He's kind of a false god because he's a jealous God, and, God's not jealous. God is all. It's one. It's what they would have called the immeasurable light. Right. And so they were looking at that demiurge and also certain forces around that, these archon, as controlling forces that were holding and entrapping this planet. And it was only through the kind of divine spark of Christ consciousness and this goddess Sophia that they were able to kind of reclaim their divine inheritance.
Mm. Well, that sounds a lot more like a Christian mythology that's greater than how it's viewed today by a lot of Christians. Like what do you think, or do you think that a lot of Christians separate the idea of Gnosticism from Christianity, and why? Like why would they do that?
Well, I think a lot of Christians don't even know. Like, they don't know this stuff. Mm. They were handed down a very literalist, in my opinion, very boring and judgmental, damaging. It's the Christian doctrine that's in so many, fundamental...
Very terrifying.
It's terrifying. They're using fear. They're using all the things that Jesus was kind of warning us about. Mm. And, the early Gnostics, they had problems with this because after the Jewish revolt against the Romans, pretty much Israel just fractured, and a lot of these mystery schools got separated, and these literalist churches started to arise, and they were taking everything as literal and not understanding the deeper significance of the Christ consciousness within, or as Paul would say, the Christ within. Wow. And so they ended up, killing their own internal, the wisdom holders of their own traditions later on when Constantine went in power and all of these kind of things. And the Gnostics were really frustrated by that. They would call these churches imitation churches, and they would call the priests of those churches waterless canals.
Hmm. So this sounds like the beginning of the schism. When the actual, I guess, Jesus or the Christ started to become very misrepresented by people. Yeah.
And for me, it's a schism, and I get into this book quite a bit of something even older, which is the New Testament or the Old Testament schism of when I was really just in this dark space. I started following empires back throughout history, trying to figure out where things went wrong, essentially. And I ended at a really weird place for me as it's almost like an atheist at the time, and it was the Garden of Eden story. Because you have this story of connection with God, with nature. It's a very tribal model of existence, harmonious with nature. And then suddenly there's this traumatic moment where they're unloved by God, they're kicked out of the garden,
ashamed, you know.
With that?
It's like now they're ashamed of what they were, and it's like they're reflecting back on how it was, you know, instead of at the time how it is.
Exactly. They're linear time, very masculine. It's original sin. And if you look at where that myth takes place, it's right smack of the birth of civilization, agriculture. In fact, they go from living in the garden into the next scene with Cain and Abel. Their lines are they're literally toiling in the fields and working with domesticated animals. So it's that spread with civilization. This thought virus just infects the whole planet, and I think you see it with the complex financial derivatives that we have today. It's just a hyperbolic version of this age-old separation. And the old Gnostics, I'm so glad you talked about this rift. The old Gnostics would talk about how Christ is the redeemer of that rift. He wasn't actually a savior. He was a soter, one who makes whole, one who bestows health.
So in a sense, he was, of course, a healer. How he's always been, or not really always been represented as, but it was more like he just went there to solve the problems and to get things working together and to kind of like spread this message and then just keep moving on.
Well, you're asking that about Jesus?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I say. I don't know. Was Jesus a real person, a cosmic download, some archetypal figure? I actually went and saw this guy, Timothy Freak, speak, and that's his real name, Freak, F-R-E-K-E. He wrote some pretty popular books like The Jesus Mysteries, and he said point blank to the audience, Jesus did not exist. That he is a composite figure from other Mediterranean mystery schools. And to me that seemed like supreme arrogance, because the dude wasn't there. He wasn't walking at that time. And even if he did, you wouldn't know. So I like the kind of quantum physics model of it's all open to probability. And I just want to collapse the wave by saying it was one way or the other. That said, the early Gnostics viewed Christ consciousness not as it's a larger being than a human. It was an entire realm of what they would call the pleroma, these heavenly realms. And so when they would say drinking of the bubbling spring of Jesus, they would then become him, and they would with this deeper reality, this Christ consciousness. And I do have moments in my book where personally I feel like I tap into that deeper dimensional reality.
Mm-hmm. So that's the direct connection through what people consider to be Gnosticism would be like the current running through you directly.
I love how you use the word current. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that through different experiences that I've had direct connections to, the world and the environment and different states of consciousness. So, I mean, I can definitely relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's the real sad thing about I think we still have literalist churches today. That's the real problem, these fundamentalists, and a lot of them are on a apocalyptic, anti-life, anti-death paradigm, and they actually use Jesus to disconnect with nature and the natural rhythms of the cosmos, and I don't think that was what it was about at all.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you on that.
Hey guys, it's Jeffery. Let me bust in here. First off, I want to say that I can see what you're talking about with the archons. In the Old Testament, I've always said God seems like Tony Soprano in the Old Testament, and in the New Testament, it seems like a whole nother, a whole nother version of God on some level. But one thing that I'm curious, I believe that there's Christ consciousness, and I do believe there's a source, which I think the way I kind of look at it is there's a source that's one with the universe, and each culture or civilization has as a being that comes down that embodies Christ consciousness on some level or on the full level, and then religion on a level is an attempt to try to understand God on some level. But what I want to know is kind of what your thoughts are on, like, you know, a lot of people like to bring up the Egyptian story of Osiris and Isis and Horus, and how Horus is very similar to the Christ story. How do you feel about Jonathan as far as that story compared to the Christ story? Are they very similar? Are they the same story?
I don't think they're the same story, but they seem to come from the same streams. And the Egyptian one is older. I think Egypt, if you really want to go to that Christ consciousness, and I'll be honest, to me, I think it's very galactic. I think these are galactic downloads in that Egypt was very tapped into, I'm just jumping into stuff I don't always jump into, other ascended planetary cultures and masters, and that frequency flows into the Christ realm of things. And that the resurrection frequency, this rebirth that we have, you find that across the planet. I do think Jesus, there was a certain line of it, of like just how profound the healing aspect of it is in Christ consciousness. I actually do work, which I hope we get to talk about this a little bit. Some of the shamanic work I do now is plant medicine with a version of ayahuasca, and we illuminate dark beings, like demonic beings. And it's weird. They have told us, beings, that they'll only accept the blood of Christ, which is considered this plant sacrament that we use, because he holds a certain light and resurrection frequency that they respect in a way. And, you know, I don't know what that means, but it did seem like a profound teaching to me. Also in my book, I do trace, Jeffrey, that basically cultures across the planet have been messaging the same thing everywhere. And you find, not only was I looking at the stories, but I was looking at pattern recognition. And I think often the way the mystery schools go is at first you think they're literal, and then they become metaphorical for your own journey, and then they become literal again as you learn a deeper significance. And so pretty much every culture across the planet, everyone, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of shamanic mystical cultures will have the same patternings. They'll have double helix snakes. They'll have a central rod. They'll have this winged bird, and it's this integration of spirit and matter, and it's almost always on a tree of life. And I think this is energetic road mapping, and I get a lot more into the book of what this means. But the energies of your body actually look like this. You know, the spine is kind of this trunk of the tree of life. There's actually double helix, torsional waves going from what's called the Eden and Pingala energy channels that look like DNA. They're entwined serpents. Mm-hmm. And we know this patterning exists in other places across the universe. Like, for instance, they just discovered this giant double, not just, I think it's 2005, but giant double helix nebula that was like 300 million miles long. So we know energy does move in these ways. Also, I think the Star of David is extremely potent, geometrical symbol. You know,
it really seems like really hermetic in its design, because it's a reflection of two different shapes. Mixed together, seemingly opposites, but together they create this other force. And have you heard of this idea of the Merkaba? Like, Merkabas.
I'm not very familiar with it. I have heard of the Merkaba, yeah.
You know, in Testament, it's actually this flying, it sounds like a UFO. It's like smoke, it's fire, it's metallic. They actually say metallic, and there's these strange beings in it. And people will call the Merkaba in the body, which is a star tetrahedron. So it's the Star of David in a three-dimensional form. It's at the heart center. If you look in yogic philosophy, the star tetrahedron is the sacred geometry of the heart, because that's the integrator of the two triangles, the masculine and the feminine, the upper and the lower. And I think this is the bridal chamber of the Gnostics they would talk about. And it's thought to be quite literally a dimensional portal. like a travel, kind of like a spaceship almost.
Right.
And if you look at all sorts of, you talked about hermetics. If you just Google hermetic, like emblems of the Middle Ages, you'll find tons of people with activated star tetrahedrons in their heart center, and they're going through profound shifts in consciousness. And I think this might be what's happening on the planet right now. Is a lot of yogis think we've been in this third chakra, which is a very masculine solar chakra at the solar plexus.
Right.
Achievement, willpower. We've been pushing through this for about 10,000 years of civilization, and those destructive fires are now pushing up into our heart center and opening that up. And the heart, it's like a freaking fusion generator. It's very powerful. It's the karma buster. It's really the center of healing. If you're an energy healer, you can't heal without, like, opening your heart. It's, like, almost impossible.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a little bit on the star tetrahedron and mystic symbols across the planet.
Right. I mean, it seems like one of the ideas that you're proposing is that a culture or a group of people or a group or even an individual will tune into this consciousness, and then that energy will kind of turn into this archetypal figure that is, like as you said, either metaphorical or literal, depending on where you are in your initiations.
Yeah, in my book I became really interested in the axial age, which is about 800 BC to zero. Well, some say 200 BC, but I like to push it down to Jesus' time. And it's just this incredible time of, like, hiring spiritual teachers on the planet. And they all taught the same thing, whether it was Buddha, Confucius, Jesus, Zoroaster, and it was essentially the golden rule.
Right.
You know, treat others as you treat yourself. Love thy neighbor as you would love yourself. So that's a heart-based teaching that's very tricky. It's so simple, and that's what makes it so complex for us humans. It's like, wow, you know, I have to love myself to love my neighbor, and loving my neighbor allows me to love myself.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like sometimes sacrifice has a lot to do with making sure that you're capable of doing yourself.
Oh my God. I'm finishing 3 years of sacrifice. Maybe we'll jump into the weirder stuff, but my next book's going to be all about, in The Electric Jesus, I talk about this black bowling ball in my abdomen that just wrecks my life. Anxiety, panic attacks. 3 years ago, I was on psilocybin mushrooms in the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens in the bathroom. And you know that one rule on psychedelics, the one thing you're not supposed to do?
Yeah, don't look in the mirror.
Don't look in the mirror.
Yeah.
I had to do it. What's that?
Don't look in the mirror. I remember that one.
Yeah.
And I did it because I felt all my shadow stuff, all the horrible things that I'd been carrying in my life, and I realized it wasn't me. It was what we call an energy healing, a parasitic astral attachment.
Right.
Spirit possession. And this, I thought, because I had done ayahuasca, which is this very powerful spiritual shaman healing brew of the Amazon, I thought, oh, you know, okay, if there really is a demon here, I'll just go on a couple ayahuasca ceremonies and get this out. This was a 3-year battle where I almost went crazy. I almost lost my life. I tried every healing modality I possibly could. Nothing worked until I met this ayahuasca church called the Santo Daime, and they have a tradition because one of their founders was actually possessed by a demon for 9 months. He was puking blood. He was hospitalized from spirit possession, and after 9 months, being illuminated and became an ally. And they said, I'll illuminate, but I want you to help my other lost brothers and sisters. So I'm just finishing up a 3-year battle of basically, you know, illuminating an entity that was literally trying to kill me. And I'll be honest, it was trying to have me kill other people. I was what you call schizophrenic. I was hearing voices. I was bipolar, suicidal thoughts, all these things. If I had done Western medicine, I just can't imagine all the drugs I would have been on. And I would have been able to illuminate the root of it all, right?
Yeah, it just would have gotten buried and buried and buried, and just would have gotten darker and darker and darker.
I think so.
Our society is so sick when it comes to pharmaceuticals, and I'm heavily drawn to shamanism. I've been studying it for many years. I don't go around saying, I'm a master shaman or whatever. I'm from Georgia, so the only way I normally get to learn about shamanism is through books and documentaries and interviewing them, medicine men on the radio show. Interviewed Serge Kahali King. I just got through, who's the guy with ayahuasca paintings, Pablo Domingo. Yeah. I just got through interviewing Harold Charing. He did his book, and I just got that book in the mail, and I just got through interviewing him on Examiner in written form, and I was looking at all that art, and it's just so beautiful. But the problem is, it's like down south, it's so repressed when it comes, here, marijuana, they treat it like it's crack still,
right,
where I'm at. So ayahuasca.
Yeah, it's pretty bad in Indianapolis also with that kind of stuff, but, there's always an avenue for expression, I just go out and I just check it out, I try to go to all kinds of events, like today I went to this pagan festival, it's not necessarily something I'm real fired up about, but I just went there and, other stuff happens.
Yeah. Well, like here, let me just say this real quick and I'll let Jonathan finish. Like you have a pagan festival there where you're at. Here would probably be like a Civil War reenactment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of those guys might be holding out on you.
That's true. That's a possibility. One of those Civil War guys might have some hashish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you never know.
You guys haven't tried ayahuasca then? That's what I'm
No, I would love to. No. I'm psychedelics, I've done shrooms, and I've been in the rave scene a long time ago, my earlier years, so I've experimented with some of that, but never ayahuasca, but I would do it.
Right.
It's just something very special. Like, I also have done a bunch of psychedelics, and then the first time I did ayahuasca, and I talk about this in my book quite a bit, it just really opened up my world, and it freaked me out, too, because suddenly I was talking to other spirits and met my spirit guides and entities and had out-of-body experiences, was really actually taken on journeys and had, like, white light laser healing surgery done on my abdomen. None of this had happened to me on LSD or mushrooms, just the spirit world opening up in that way. And I think that's why it's so powerful of a healer. It actually has the active ingredient in it is DMT, which there's a great book and a movie called DMT, the Spirit Molecule. DMT is found across plants, people, throughout nature. And there's this Dr. Rick Strassman, that actually hypothesizes that the pineal secretes DMT at significant points in our life for these mystical experiences. Right. So I think it's wired for a lot of healing. The problem with ayahuasca in the U.S. is it's a Schedule I substance. Yeah. It's the most healing medicine I've ever come across. It healed me of such profound, deep wounds that nobody, acupuncture, yoga, I went on Xanax, I went on antidepressants, none of this could work, illuminating a demon. And it's a Schedule I substance, so there's what I call the Ayahuasca Underground Railroad. It's like a freedom of consciousness and healing, a movement that's under the radar and, coming up from the Amazon to the States because we need it. We're really sick.
Yeah, I'll agree. Like one of the things that I don't understand is why it's so regulated, because it's something that our bodies produce on its own. And in Brazil, isn't it kind of just considered like a supplement as far as like pharmaceutical or not really pharmaceuticals, but like the medicine trade goes there, it's considered a supplement, right?
Yeah, big deal.
Yeah.
It's part of their lives. We in the U.S. have such a hard time integrating things that could be a little challenging, So yeah, we're in this other drug culture of like, I live in New York, and man, come Friday and Saturday night, the streets are just, I call it the walk of the zombies. You know, everyone's totally drunk, and, you know, I think there's a reason they call alcohol spirits. It's like people are kind of like possessed by this alcohol poison that just really doesn't heal, it doesn't do positive things for you, and it wrecks how many thousands of lives every year, and that's cool. But this other, the healing medicines aren't. But I think people are inherently afraid of psychedelics because they really make you face your shadow, and they can deprogram you from an egoic, parasitic, controlling societal model very quickly. Right. You know, they're like the red pill in the Matrix, and then you're suddenly like, oh, I don't want to be jacked in the Matrix anymore. Maybe I could do something else, something meaningful with my life. Right.
I mean, I've definitely had some pretty powerful spiritual experiences on psychoactive, powerful psychoactives and without. But I would say that things like psilocybin, peyote, marijuana to an extent, even sometimes cocaine, has kind of helped me bridge a gap between a spot and another spot, so that I could get to understand it a little bit more.
Yeah. You know, the number one question I get on book tours is, isn't ayahuasca cheating? And then I used to have the complicated answers for it, and now I just kind of ask the person back. I always say, I'm going to guess you've never done ayahuasca, and the answer is always no. But I want to kind of remark about the Santa Daime, the church I'm in, which is, and that's a Brazilian church. It's a spiritual practice with a cousin of ayahuasca, which we call the Daime. So it's a sacrament, and it's like both. You know, it's like meditation and ayahuasca. See, it's a very accelerated evolution because you're actually doing spiritual practices. You're doing shamanic dance works. You're doing meditations. You're doing mediumship work. But it's like doing it with love. And I really think people need to be a little wiser sometimes about psychedelics and that they are rocket fuel.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% also. So
I just see all these, like, 20-year-old kids, and some ways they're opening up at the festivals. I mean, festival culture is huge right now, but I don't see them finding the mystery schools and going deeper necessarily, and that's what the Gnostics did, is because they understood it was dangerous, because when you open up these realms, you're going to have to face your own version of the archons, dark forces, and it's really good to have the protection and the container to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I would, and I know that Jeffrey agrees, but I mean, I would love the opportunity to do that in the proper environment, so they could understand and go further. Because, I mean, I've never really seen psychoactives and this type of stuff as something that you do just to get wasted. I mean, because if I want to get wasted, I'll just, like, slam a fifth of whiskey or something, But if I want to have an experience, and I want to understand, and I want to evolve as a person, or even become more than that, take the time to think it out.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is in the American culture, it's pill, 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 pill. And then most of these people who are on the pill, 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 they could hear this conversation and be like, oh, my God, they're talking about drugs. But the thing is, shamanism and these plants and these different, type of substances that make us react with our DMT and have these experiences, obviously some sort of intelligent force or energy put that plant here at the device to do that. It's in the grand scheme of things. That's what people don't understand, is that, that something put that plant here for a reason, to react to our bodies and our spirits for a particular reason, or it wouldn't do it. It's like the Rastafarians say, marijuana is a phone to God. Like, I can go a long time without smoking weed because I can't find any, and then I get some, and I swear I feel wonderful, like God fingering my brain. I'm like, my God, where have I been? And when you describe some of the dark times you've been going through, I can relate to that right now because I'm going through them right now, and I've gone through them before. and I jokingly say they take me out and put me right back in. But right now I feel like they're taking me out, and I've been going through a lot of dark moods and just crazy stuff, and I'm on Klonopin for anxiety and stuff. But I mean, these drugs in a situation where it's monitored, like with peyote and ayahuasca and stuff like that, they're there to open us up to the realms and to show us, parts of ourselves that need healing. And like you said, to battle the ego and, things that would be considered negative energies and demons and stuff like that. That's what they're there. That's what these medicine men have been using these for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So my only problem is in the South is finding them. That's my problem.
That's a lot of. Yeah. I have the issue, Jeffrey, being a public figure, and people are always like, "How can I get it?" And I wish it was legal and I could say, but I unfortunately I can't. So the people have a journey, and these things come, and if you want it, you'll find it. There's plenty of. It costs more, but there's plenty of great ayahuasca retreats in South America. One I kind of recommend to some people is the Way of the Temple of Light. It's a pretty good one. But I wanted to address, communion. We just brought up a really good point that I've been thinking a lot about, which is we commune with spirits every day by ingesting them. And a lot of the spirits we commune with are dead ones, angry ones, Big Macs, 3 cups of coffee. There's a lot of addiction elements, and I really do think these molecules and these plants and everything, there's a spirit or an energy at least connected to them. Sure. And I've been waking up. I've been asleep. I've been sleepwalking through most of my life, I'm realizing. And I'm now waking up through the plant medicines to the magic of communion. So when I take the daime, I really connect with that being. The daime hymns tell us it's a divine being. Or when I smoke Santa Maria, which Jeffrey was talking about, I do prayers to Santa Maria so that I can actually bring her into my energy field and experience that in a positive way. And I just think we've lost that. We don't know how to go out and open our heart and connect with the trees. Yeah. Yeah, hey guys, I'm sorry, we got to take a break, so we're going to come right back, and we're going to take a break, and just if you need to get a drink or take a restroom break, just stay by your Skype. Don't disconnect anything. It's a break that's about, I think, 7 or 8 minutes, and then we'll come back for the other half of the show, and we'll be back with Jonathan and his author of Electric Jesus, and we'll be back shortly. So thanks everybody for listening, and see you in a minute.
All right.
How do I
Hi, this is Rob Simone, and I want to tell you about my brand new show here on the Paranormal Radio Network. Each week, I bring you the most interesting people on the planet, the most in-depth discussions, and the most controversial issues. We go where no talk show dares to go. Join me every week for the Rob Simone Talk Show here on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Chip.
I'm Nicole.
Together we host The Mind Cemetery, where the paranoia about the paranormal comes to rest.
We broadcast live every Monday night at 11 p.m. Eastern for 2 full hours. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook, as well as our cemetery.com.
We cover all the topics you won't hear on your local news.
Well, I don't really like watching the news anyway.
Then this is the perfect show for someone like you.
I wouldn't go that far. After all, I am the skeptic.
So you don't believe in ghosts?
Nope.
UFOs?
Yeah, no.
How about Bigfoot?
Not really. You'll never find a Bigfoot.
How about the lost city of Atlantis, then?
Isn't that on Google Earth? No? Then forget it. It's never going to get found.
Looks like I have my work cut out for me, then, as I take on a true skeptic as we discuss the latest and hottest topics in the UFO and paranormal fields with some of the most provocative and informative guests to hit the airwaves.
That's right, you do. And it all happens right here on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, live every Monday night at 11 p.m. Eastern. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook, as well as mindcemetery.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Psychic Medium Christopher George, and I have a new show that will air the first Friday of every month from 11 to midnight Eastern Standard Time. The show is called Insight with Psychic Medium Christopher George. It's all about psychic readings. I welcome my listeners to call in for a free reading. Just remember, don't ask me a question that you really don't want the answer to. I'll give it to you the way the spirits give it to me. Straightforward and real. The first Friday of every month. Insight, 11 to midnight.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Light up your night with the Kevin Smith Show. Hi, this is Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio. The Church of Vegas. Welcome back to the Church of Mabus radio show. I just briefly wanted everybody to know that this week I posted up some top secret documents from the United Nations, their parapsychology unit, at the website churchofmabusradio.com. That's churchofmabus radio.com. involving the Thomas Reed case. I'm friends with Thomas Reed. He's been on everybody's radio show on the network, just about. Not everybody, but most of everybody. And been on my show. I'm pretty sure he's been on Joe's. I think he's been on Stephanie's. But basically, these documents are proof that there's a parapsychology unit in the United Nations, and Thomas Reed has a lawyer named Robert Bletchman, and this is like back in the 90s or late 80s. I always mess up dates. The dates are on the documents on the site, but basically they discussed his case in front of the United Nations, and I posted an article with the paperwork, and it's a whole discussion between a member of the United Nations with this lawyer, and they've asked Thomas to take it down. Somebody did, an email, and he didn't, and he gave it to me, and now I'm spreading it everywhere. It's on beforeitsnews.com now, so hopefully I've upset a lot of people. I have a bunch of other stuff, too, I'm going to release, so check out churchofmabusradio.com. You'll find some stuff that you normally might not find anywhere else, and if I get whacked, you know why.
Just don't take a ride with a couple guys and sit in the front seat.
Did you see what God just did to me, man? but no, with Jonathan Phillips, when I was 17, I had testicular cancer. I almost died. It spread to my stomach and lungs. I went through chemo. I've been healed 16 years. Lost a testicle. That wasn't fun. Shortly after that, my dad died, and he was abusive mentally and physically. Big old macho 300-pound man with concrete fists that used to beat the hell out of me because I'd get beat up by bullies at school, so I'd come home and he'd beat the hell out of me. But nonetheless, after I was healed from cancer, he died. And like I said earlier, I told that story at the beginning of the show, but my father always told me that if I ever did drugs, he would shoot me in the face. So I never did drugs ever. When he was alive. But when he died, when he died,
he would shoot you in the face. That's very intense.
Yeah. And after he died, I started to do drugs. But basically experimented a lot with stuff. I seeked spiritual self-help and all kinds of things, and I've been clean off hard drugs like coke and meth for 16 years. I'll never touch that stuff again because I'm fat and I'll go to the emergency room. I have high blood pressure. I'll die. But stuff like I have like anxiety. Like I have Klonopin from a doctor. Pot, I love pot when I can find it, and I have experimented with psychedelics, but I'll never do chemicals again. That's just something I can't do because my heart will explode and I'll die. But pretty much during this time of looking into the occult and reading everything I can get my hands on, from the Bible, I read it from front to back, to Druidism, to shamanism, to even Anton LaVey kind of stuff, like anything I could get my hands on, I would just read it. But I had experiences. I started to attract UFOs to my home in Georgia with multiple witnesses. My mother, who doesn't do drugs at all, she drinks beer sometimes. My brother, he doesn't do drugs. But me, I was experimenting with that kind of stuff during that time, and I opened ways. I attracted UFOs. I saw beings from elsewhere, beings made of light. I saw beings that were very serpentine, reptilian-like. I saw beings that were very small with cloaks on, standing around a black box. And all of this stuff I saw with other people, and they said that I was attracting this stuff to me on some level. I even had some type of government agency come out and chase the UFOs away with a helicopter. I had an incident where a type of helicopter was over my home in Georgia. I think it was 1996, and it made no sound, and there was a man in the cockpit in some type of uniform, and he waved at me, and a friend saw it, and it shot straight up in the air. It was like he was mocking us on some level, and my friend, like, vanished and never talked to me again after that, after seeing that. So I've had a lot of weird experiences. But I guess my question is now for you, Jonathan, could you tell us a story about your experience with a reptilian that was in a spacesuit?
Well, I'd like to start I don't want to get into the alien material because, to be honest, Jeffrey, that was the last thing I put in the book. I didn't even have it in until the last edit. And Daniel Pinchbeck, I don't know if you know him, he wrote a best-selling book, 2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl. He was my editor, and he just said, I'm not going to publish this until you put in everything. You know, your shadow stuff, your messy relationships. And I think it's a much stronger book. People can relate with it more. But it meant I had to put in the galactic stuff. And, you know, people can handle spirituality and consciousness and planetary evolution, but when you drop the A-bomb, you know, you can really get some reaction. And so just to say that my entire journey through this book is pretty much contact with galactic intelligences. From seeing energy fields that first night, I was given one word, which was alien, to slowly just, I even had like a GPS implant put in me in ayahuasca so my guides could just find me easier, to full-blown experiences of seeing people shape-shift. Yeah, you know, as I was studying it, I was learning about, well, actually what happened is I was on MDMA and with my girlfriend, and very high vibrational, and we had fallen asleep that night, and she was next to me, and suddenly she just, for no reason, jumps on top of me and just starts painfully grinding and pushing and slithering, like, against me with her second chakra, and like just pounding against me, and she's like asleep and in some trance. Right. And I just felt like she was taken over by something. And I'm just like, I was actually in a little pain because she was doing this right where the black bowling ball was in my abdomen, second chakra. And she's doing this, and then suddenly I just feel my energy pick up and match hers. And I shapeshift into whatever she was, and my whole energetic field, it was weird, I could feel it, that I had shapeshifted into a very powerful kind of reptilian alien consciousness, in a defense mechanism, like an energetic defense mechanism of what was coming at me. But then something strange happened because, you know, people, conspiracy theorists and everybody, like, they love the reptilians and they love to freak out about the reptilians, but that's not a censored spiritual Christ consciousness place to come from. And after I had shapeshifted, my guides came in and just told me, I mean, this is kind of strange stuff, but they said, my family, I actually heard my family fighting in some visionary state. I could hear my dad and my sister, who are a lot more intuitive and sensitive, being very frustrated and angry with my brother and my mom. And my guides came in and said this was actually like a galactic lineage feud that was going on in my family, and we had chosen to incarnate together to, like, forgive and come to unification.
That's awesome.
And they were saying I was some type of bridge in this, and that one thing I had to do was that with my girlfriend, they said came from more of a second chakra reptilian line, and maybe my dad and my mom and me were more of a heart-centered line. They said that I helped my partner, Jade, in the book, open up to her spiritual side, and that I needed to learn the second chakra in the material world from her. And that's actually how the book ends up. That's how it happens. My guides tell me to stick with her, even though I'm totally frustrated. And by the end, she finally has spiritual experiences and opens up to something much greater. And of course, it's in a way that it happens with her finding another man and leaving me. But our relationship ended when she found, like, she suddenly believed in the spiritual worlds that I was navigating.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of that had to happen. Like, you had to play it all the way through to the end.
Yeah, and there's a lot of literature out there about these reptilians being controlling entities, and thoughts that the archons that the Gnostics talk about may have been these creatures. There's a book by John Lamb Lash that says this. In the book, I actually I had this experience that I'd like to share, and it'll get into the reptilians in a second, where I literally got beamed at Burning Man, and I had just had a very tiny dose of mushrooms. It was like just enough to make things eat, nothing else.
Sure.
But it opened up me enough, and Burning Man is a very open space, where suddenly I literally got beamed like a Star Trek movie, you know, and my back straightened, and suddenly the energy was just flowing through me, and my heart center opened, and I could see this dimension of reality that had always been missing, but it felt very familiar, and I saw this white lattice work of divine energy holding everything together, that it really was love that was the structure of the universe. But it wasn't just like a hippy-dippy love, it was very scientific and mathematical as well. And suddenly I realized, like, wow, you know, I couldn't be mad at anyone. I can't be mad at, like, the heroes, the villains, you know, the CEOs, the temp workers, because we're all just these divine Shakespeares creating it together. And I realized my whole journey, I owed one man for my journey, and that was George W. Bush. You know, if it hadn't been for him winning the election, I would have never gone on my spiritual journey. So, as strange it was, I was sending him light and love.
Right.
And then, so after that experience, and I'm still kind of talking to my galactic, we run into two friends of Jade's, and the friend, she sees me and just says, "Johnny, every time I see you, it brings out my shaman side." And I see her literally shapeshift into a sexy gray alien, like very feminine, not the spooky kind of detached ones that you see online so much.
Right.
Read about an abduction. She was much more playful, and you know, but she shapeshifted. And her husband, he saw me, and he's a very grounded guy. This guy runs it's like a $800 million advertising company in Manhattan, you know. And he sees me, and he's just like, "Oh man, you're up there with the aliens, aren't you?" I'm like, "Why?" He's like, I had these experiences at Burning Man the last couple of years. The first year when his wife and him, it was their first date. He tells me she literally took off her face and showed him the sexy gray alien she was underneath. And I didn't tell him at that time that I'd just seen her shapeshift, because I was still trying to understand what shapeshifting was even. And then he tells me a story of after that, when he would go to bed, consciousness for 3 nights in a row was brought up into this like mothership and above Earth, and he was in this kind of galactic federation, and he's like, "Man, aliens are not what we think they are. It's not this clunky 1950s, abduction thing. There might be that, but he's like, the people I saw were they were like David Bowie art stars, flamboyant alchemists, very creative and funny, and they had integrated science and math and art and all these things. They were integrated culture." And so he looked out of the ship, and these aliens said, "We're showing this because you can handle it." He saw beams of indigo intention and high vibrational light being beamed into the planet to help with some type of what he thought was an ascension process. But he did say he saw a few ships beaming down negative energy, and that these beings on his ship said that some of those were reptilian. But from his perspective, he thought that the positive was outweighing the negative as far as extraterrestrial influences go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I believe that these beings come in all shapes and flavors of personalities, just like human beings do. And a lot of people in like the conspiracy truther, circles, not all of them, but a lot of them, they like to, say the whole reptilian race is evil and all our politicians are shapeshifters, and they like to label entire species of races of beings as evil based on speculation. Now, I'm not saying that there's not, some of these beings that may be negative or evil, but to label an entire species of beings all across the galaxy as evil, it's just as ignorant and stupid as Hitler labeling the Jews as evil and exterminating them, and that kind of thought process. Just like people, there's going to be good ones and bad ones, and, stuff like that. So that's something that I'm an advocate that I always speak up about with the reptilian thing. I'm like, just like people, there could be a faction of bad reptilians who are doing stuff, to humans, abducting them, but who's to say there's not a Nirvana, Jesus, lizard, reptilian on planet Zanzibar for us right now. So that right. Mentality of labeling entire species as evil, it drives me crazy. It makes me nuts, man. It really does. But my experiences were positive.
I feel like it's disempowering, too, because suddenly there's this power that's greater than you. I'm coming out of a 3-year battle with a demon, and what did I learn? A million things, but one is, it all comes from God. And so what would Christ consciousness teach in this? It's like forgiveness, love, but the Daime also have, the church I work in, they also have another element, which is firmness. You love with firmness. You don't let these things beat you down. You don't let them control you. And I think this is a problem with conspiracies, and I actually think a lot of people that are paranoid, they may have entity attachments because these entities are paranoid because they're very suffering beings. They're in dimensions that are very difficult and almost like hellish realms. And it's a cycle of paranoia and, misery loves company. I think we need to stay firm in the light in this ascension process. And, man, I know that can be hard. I mean, look, for 2 years I just wanted to kill myself. But, eventually I got through it. And it was only by staying firm in the light that happened.
Right. So it sounds like the experiences that you had at Burning Man kind of put you in this passive, neutral state of being receptive and not really worrying too much about maybe good and bad and all that, and just accepting things and, experiencing this consciousness. There's a Gnostic line of good and bad are brothers of one another. Right. Yeah, and when it's got this alchemical line of when you unite the upper and the lower, the outer and the inner, the left and the right, then you become one. Healing, I really think healing's about unification, and that's what's interesting about the Daimes, that they are in a spiritual battle, and they know it. They are battling dark forces, but they're not battling dark forces to kill them. They're battling dark forces to heal and bring peace to them, and bring, unification. And it's very hard for these entities to understand that because they've been punished and tortured and have done it to others for so long. They're really in these karmic, dark realms. And that's also their role that they're playing. I mean, if there was nothing left to heal, if there was nothing left to resist, then it wouldn't be the same. These cycles wouldn't continue on. Yeah, but maybe that right initiation for us is, they're testing us, but they're also creating a lot of suffering. So, yeah. I mean, I want to say,
sorry, Jonathan, I interviewed a guy named Brent Raines about the Native American perspective on UFOs and aliens, and he said that the shaman's perspective of them is that, that it's initiation, that some of them will actually come to you and try to scare you or give you a negative experience, I guess, to see if you got balls enough to bring it to the next ladder of the rung. So some people have that happen to them, and then they run off all over the place and tell everybody about their negative experience, when if they would have just manned up and, ballsed up a little bit, they could have went to the next level, and the being probably would have became more positive.
Right.
Yeah, we give up our power all the time. We do this with politicians and everybody else, too. It doesn't have a freaking UFO.
It seems to be like a type of an an initiatory crisis. When something like that happens, like say if you join a group or like a coven of witches or something like that, you do your year and a day, and then nobody talks to you after that period of time, and then it's like you're wondering why aren't these people talking to me, when it's really just still part of an initiation process.
Yeah, with the Daime, when they get their stars and become members, when they commit to it, often what happens is it just gets really tough for about 6 months. People say that a lot, initiation. Jeffrey, I think for your listeners, they would probably like to hear, since you're talking about Native Americans and kind of like the star families out there, and there's a lot of indigenous tribes that say their origins come from the stars, like are they the Dago in Africa and the Zuni and like New Mexico. But in Christian lore, there's quite a bit about like Christ consciousness having these galactic origins. For instance, when Jesus is born, the wise men follow a moving star. Stars don't move. There's also, just Google Jesus UFOs, and you're going to find all sorts of crazy medieval paintings of like Jesus affection, or Jesus and the crucifixion, and there are literally 2 UFOs with one with a stick shift, and like people driving these UFOs. They're metallic, they have emblems on them, and that's from I think late 1300s. There's pictures of Jesus in the baptism with John, and there's a giant UFO with portholes above him. There's the what is that with Mary? It's not the Annunciation, is it? Annunciation, where there's a UFO in these paintings, and it's zapping light into her womb. And then the modern day visionary artist Alex Gray, he has got this painting, Cosmic Christ, that mimics all these images of Jesus being an alien. So there's quite a bit of it if you just even do that.
I just interviewed Alex Gray on Examiner with his wife. I wrote out 10 questions, and he answered 10 questions, and we got into Tool, and we even got into ET, extraterrestrial life. It was great. Man, it was cool. It was a great interview.
Alex is a buddy of mine. He actually did a blurb for my book, and I did a blurb for his book. His work appears quite a bit in the Electric Jesus, actually. I think he's very attracted to the Gnostic lines. He's got all sorts of pictures of Jesus as a healer.
He is definitely an amazing artist.
Ned of Dean, he has a new book coming out, I think it's in October. That's what the interview was about, and it was pretty cool, definitely. But yeah, his art definitely touches on that cosmic level, like we were talking about with Pablo and things like that. No doubt about it. I mean, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, Jonathan, you were talking about Bush and everything earlier. I'm kind of curious if you'd be willing to discuss how you feel about what's going on right now in politics with everything on some level.
Yeah, I don't think they're looking where the transformation's happening. Like, I actually, Jeffrey, I feel like you were the one talking about who you're going to vote for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you. Like, I don't believe in either of these, but I'll probably vote for Obama just so that for the Supreme Court justices being chosen. But I think there's something so much deeper and profound happening on this planet. Well, I would like to say how frustrated I was with Obama, because I was one of those that really believed change is coming and I thought he'd have a vision. Like, George Bush had a vision. He went in and he took everything way right. He was kind of a puppet piece for Cheney, I think, in that, but he was very effective. And I think Obama came in and just was straight up the middle. Same things. It's all these people, all these youth that had activated to not get Bush elected, had activated then to get Obama elected. I think they're all just disempowered with politics, and they're looking now at creating new systems that we can build together. And this is actually what we do with the Evolver Network that I run, is we are working on creating this new planetary culture, and rather than we have all these parasitic models of institutions, educational, they all just suck all the energy from the 9% and bring it to the 1%. Right. So what we're creating is these new communities of like honoring each other's gifts and sharing those gifts, new economic models, permaculture models of growing food. So it's like an abundant model over the scarcity model. And when I hear Obama and Kerry talk, to me, it's like they're talking from another century. There's a whole new thing coming in that I realizing it's happening. And I feel really sad for people because I think in the country, they're looking like, I don't think these jobs are coming back. And the economic, and the economic growth, like this planet can't sustain economic growth. We're on a finite planet. We're $12 trillion in debt. These old models, if we attach to them, that's going to create a lot of suffering.
Right.
You got to kind of start letting go, and it's also the snake is shedding its skin, so you don't, if it leaves the skin too early, then there's, die. But I think the snake skin, and I hope some more people start opening up their eyes to it.
Mm.
Yeah, it definitely seems hopeless.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying it definitely seems hopeless, and Romney to me just seems like he's out for the rich, and I mean some of his comments about that with the veterans and the poor. I mean he doesn't even really like with his RNC speech at the Republican National Convention. He didn't even mention the troops or anything. And then I've also asked why didn't Bush or Cheney or anybody speak at the Republican Convention? Because they don't want people to remember them. That's why. Yeah. And Obama, I think I think he's got his problems too, but he lost his mother to cancer and battled with insurance companies. So I do think on some things he has his heart in the right place, and others that he's just as controlled by the war machine as anybody else. And I mean, the guy's already getting gray hair. Because once you get in there and you got Israel barking up your butt and all these Middle East stuff, it's got to make you insane. And all the shadowy other functions that are trying to control everything, and lobbyists and corporations, they're all sold out. I would, like I've said, I'd rather be screwed by a black guy that sings Al Green songs than Rom Nuts.
Yeah, that's something that my girlfriend brought up. She was like, being the president has really aged Obama. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's definitely pretty apparent. And it seems like what these guys are trying to do is kind of abandon the way things have been done and to try to move it forward and to make these types of sacrifices that people aren't really understanding in order to make a better foundation for a future government.
Yeah.
But what do I know?
I think what Jonathan's saying is there's some truth to it. There's the change in consciousness and these new movements are part of it. But I guess what I'm worried about it seems like that part of me wonders, like a lot of Native Americans that I've interviewed, like Nancy Red Star and some others, they all say that the earth is about to die and be reborn, and it's almost kind of strange, like weird to sit back and hear a Native American talking like Revelation stuff, like the earth being reborn by fire and getting a new earth. It sounds like Revelations from Christianity, so I kind of like pause and say, But I'm wondering, there's part of me that feels that, I know politics is not going to solve anything. It's just going to be the same old story. We're not going to magically get all these new jobs and everybody's going to go back to, Wonderland, Candyland. It seems like, if you look throughout history, there's been these extinction level events, and I have a daughter that's 2 years old. I don't want an extinction level event to happen, but if you look out throughout history, they have happened before when people start getting batty on the earth, or like what's that joke post I saw about an extinction level happened because dinosaurs were homosexual, but that was some joke post on Facebook. But I wonder if that's what it's going to take, is just some kind of earth change that's so dramatic that it forces us to be hunter-gatherers again and live in tribes. And that, to me, that seems more more realistic than, you know, some politician fixing everything, and that's kind of sad and scary.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I think that unless we build a Death Star, the planet is not going to let us destroy it. So sometimes I wonder now, this is kind of like a cynical thing, but sometimes I wonder now if instead of worrying about saving the planet, like how we're going to save ourselves from the planet because of everything that we've done.
Yeah, I think that's more realistic than us destroying the planet, more like the planet just getting tired of us destroying it and, you know, shaking some of the parasites off.
Right.
So what do you think, Jonathan, about what do you think about 2012 and all this the changes happening right now and the era we're living in? We're in the year of the dragon right now, and interestingly enough, you brought up the snake. Next year is the year of the serpent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's going to be extinctions and these kind of things. It's already happening. Things are already awful, and they could get much worse. The doctrine with the daime is very clear. If you are getting, if you fall into despair, you're not paying attention.
Right.
Because the light is actually more powerful, and that's our teaching. So you know, it's like I've made a commitment to stay firm in the light and understand that it can transform all. It can really heal all. And you know, I'm saying this from someone that really didn't lost their life for a couple of years. So I feel like I very profoundly feel this, having kind of gone through a death and resurrection. And I think that's what's happening on the planet right now, is literally a new dimension is becoming available to us.
Right.
But it's like birth. You know, I think there is a reason birth pains are so painful. That's what it is. I mean, Jesus talks a lot about rebirth. You know, the labor pains of it, and then what happens. That's the resurrection frequency. And that's what I think is happening. I really do feel there's a new consciousness, a new energy literally coming in and healing, and people are going through profound healing journeys. When I go on tours, guys, I ask this question, like, who here feels like they're going through some type of initiation or healing journey? 95% at least raise their hand.
Right.
That would not have happened. I wouldn't be talking to you guys about Jesus, energy, demons. I didn't believe in any of this stuff, you know, just a few years ago. So I think it's opening up. And the trick is we've got to be really firm in love. Like, if I could love a demon, I sure as hell could love John Kerry. I always mix those two up. Mitt Romney.
Yeah, Mitt Romney.
They're a little bit of the same automaton. But I see Romney, and I see a man that's just, like, not connected with his heart.
Uh-huh.
You know, I can have compassion for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely feels like the foundations are crumbling and the veil is being lifted, and any other kind of metaphor that would describe this type of a shift in consciousness, because that's really what it's going to take. It's not going to take politics, because I see kind of politics as a byproduct of culture and debate and this and that, but it's going to take everybody experiencing this and being able to accept it one way or the other for things to move on. I mean, I don't want the world to be destroyed. You know, like I don't think it'd be great to live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, you know, or anything like that. And I'd much rather see this change in consciousness occur than lose everything.
You too, and my thoughts are on that. I love how you stated that. It's just kind of like, what's your gift? What are you doing? You know, how are you being that change? And I mean, I think through, you know, you have a radio show for this stuff. You know, there's these little ways that we can all make a difference, because we get so caught in the politics of like, especially this election. But what can we all do with that?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be like one of the biggest messages that you may be trying to get across is kind of just like acceptance of these concepts, you know, and then putting yourself in a position where you feel like you're doing the best that you can do for the whole thing, you know, instead of just thinking, now that you've undergone this process of change and you're conquering your demons and healing them in the light, now you can expand further.
Yeah, much further. I mean, and I think that's the trick, is like, first is healing yourself, and then it's healing the world. And that's actually what we're taught in ceremony, is like, heal yourself and then help your brothers and sisters out. I think
help anybody.
The most important things we can do is, like, most people I know come from screwed up family lines.
Right.
You know, we're the ends of these family trees that are just corrupted energies. Like, if we can heal ourselves, we have to start thinking about ourselves differently.
Right.
Well, I definitely like your view on Christ. I believe in Christ. I just have a lot of trouble when it comes to followers. Like, I live down south, so there's a lot of crazy followers of the Christian religion down south and all over the place. Just like there is, I guess, with Muslims and all that. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I let that rub off on my whole thing. Like, I don't even, there's points and times where I don't even want to associate myself with Christianity because of them. And I grew up with a dad who was a Baptist preacher, and he was crazy too, and used to inject rattlesnake venom into his arms to be immune to at some weird church. So a lot of crazy stuff in the South when it comes to Christianity. But I like how Jonathan is still focusing on Christ and, the positive points, and I guess not letting all that sludge affect him on some level. I let it affect me. It's like my girlfriend went to a church here, and she told them that she voted for Obama, and the first thing they said was, well, did you repent? That is so crazy.
God wants Mitt Romney to be president.
I know, right?
And, if you don't vote for him, you're going to burn in hell.
That's exactly what... Yeah, they gave her crap about her tattoo, too, but... I
seem to remember something about, like, let unto Caesar, what's his, and, but I guess they're just not paying attention to that one. Are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still here. I'm still here.
I mean, you guys know I'm a little obsessed, obviously, with entity issues, because I think most people have,
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And I think, I've just seen it in the Daime, suddenly someone illuminates a being and their eating disorder goes away, or their smoking addiction goes, it's just crazy, their anger issue went away. Like Jeffrey, your dad, I'm pretty sure he was probably suffering from something, just with the way you described him. I have a lot of compassion that, when you have violence against family like that, often these beings love to wreck families. And just as I think most people suffer from some form, probably lighter form than what I had to go through, I think organizations do too. I think a lot of the right-wing church is spirit-possessed. I think the Catholic Church is. I would love to do a freaking Kura kind of exorcist work in the Capitol building, because like Dick Cheney, it was so obvious he was suffering from possession,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see that, and it seems like this strange layer of clairvoyance or something that covers these these organizations and people, and to spread deceit, to get these people thinking about their paranoia and their addictions and the consequences, the fear and all these other things that destroy everything.
Yeah, the Republicans are very good at deceit. I think they can actually be pretty satanic in the way they do things.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree. It's like the evil law firm on that show Angel.
I haven't seen it, but I could kind of guess it. I think I saw a movie where the devil was an attorney. It had Keanu Reeves in it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know. I saw a quote from Anton LaVey, the founder of Church of Satan, and he said that his religion was pretty much Ayn Rand's philosophy, just with ritual at it. And that's Paul Ryan's whole thing, is her. Like, he worships that chick. So I thought that was kind of a weird quote from Anton LaVey about basically the whole Satanism religion was her philosophy, just with ritual at it. So that was kind of creepy to me.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems kind of like what we talked about earlier, that all these concepts have been bent and warped and just hammered out in a way that it's kind of like what you said. You don't like to be associated with Christians, and it's like you don't really have to be, in order to feel however you feel, because I mean, obviously congregating with certain people just doesn't work, and it kind of feeds. It kind of feeds the parasites.
Yeah, I just interviewed Eve Organ, Dark Side of Cupid, and she got into this. Have you ever checked out that book, Jonathan, on Beazle? It's called The Dark Side of Cupid, and it gets into these beings in relationships and manipulating relationships and feeding off the energy, and it kind of touches on, she gets into it deeply, like psychologically, and our vulnerabilities, and it just came out. It's called Dark Side of Cupid by Eve Organ. It's definitely worth checking out.
Oh yeah, it sounds great.
I'll read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instant Karma's in the interview her. That's right, Jason Wilson. But yeah, I guess, so what is the solution with getting rid of these beings? Like I said with her, life's crappy enough without some invisible asshole messing with your life too. I mean, how do you get rid of them? I mean, you said you battled your demon for 3 years. I mean, I think I on some level, I suffer from some type of negative being that harasses me on some level. So, I mean, what is the solution to getting rid of these negative beings? Is it seeking Christ completely as is it ayahuasca? If so, give me some. What's the solution to, how did you overcome this being?
Well, it's through very special spiritual technology. Jeffrey, I'm glad you said this, because I think there's something probably messing with you too, just because when you talked about the anxiety, that anxiety I think is often caused by dark force entities. So, illuminating them, I think this is a new spiritual technology. Because if you look in the Bible, Jesus, he does extraction, picks them out of people's bodies, and he's a very high vibrational being. This is a different technology. I think it's a spiritual upgrade of, you don't just kick them out, because you kick a demon out, where do they go?
Mm-hmm.
They'll go into the next person that they can get, next victim, right? If you illuminate a demon, they become your friend, and then it becomes very interesting, because then they go get their other friends and be like, guys, trust me, this is really great.
Right. Yeah.
It feels good. And then, but the way the illumination works, if I can just describe them in the Santa Daime, is the Santa Daime it's all about spiritual alchemy, transformation of energies. And so the men are on one side, the women are on the other, to create a magnetic current. They sing hymns that open up the astral portal from above. There's a cross in the center. And then the energy circulates through the men and the women. They sing from their heart centers, and it creates literally they call it a current of energy. The churches are called currents. And that current is what heals us and holds us together, and it keeps us in the present moment. It opens up other dimensions. So if you can stay with the current and the hymns, you can stay with multi-dimensional healing and work with the guides that come in through that. So that said, there are special mediumship works, especially ones called illumination works, where at a certain point you let the dark forces into you. And this was my biggest fear, was being taken over. And the irony is, to heal the shadow, he needs a voice. He needs what they would call an operaio. They need a vessel, a channel to come into the center space, into the temple, to receive the light. And so the way it'll go is when the mediumship part of the work opens, when you feel something, you let it in, and it expresses. And usually they have horrible posture. Mine for several months would just say, "I want to kill him. I want to kill him," meaning me.
Right.
But over time, what happens is they ask for forgiveness. My being started bowing at the cross. He started admitting he was scared. And little by little, she started illuminating. Some of them can go to the light right away. Other ones, it takes a little bit of time. In the Daime, they always illuminate. That's kind of the crazy thing. They always illuminate.
So when you say illuminate, you mean this dark being decides to go to the light. I keep thinking of this guy named Timothy Wiley I'm interviewing soon. He's been on the network before, but he wrote these books from the Urantia stuff that claims that the fallen angels were forgiven by God, incarnating as humans to make up for their pillaging and all that stuff. But I don't know if that's true or not, but it's certainly an interesting theory there from Timothy Wiley that's pretty out there. But you say illuminate, you mean they just go to the light and they come back to the universal source, so to speak?
Yeah, they go to the light, and actually they often do just what you said. They don't necessarily, they can go back in human bodies and reincarnate. A lot of them become really powerful allies. And for instance, the one that had possessed Padrino Sebastião for 9 months, the guy that was puking blood, this being, his name is Mr. Trunkarua, and he works with the Daime to help dark beings illuminate. He helps them, and he knows how to work with them because he was one. And
so it's like you became a narcotics counselor, or something like that, like an AA representative, because he's already gone through the process, and now he's kind of acting as a conduit to bring other things into illumination.
Exactly. He knows the territory, and also those beings respect that, right?
Right.
Oh, you were like me, and now you're clean. You got healed. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, that's a pretty human experience, for something like that to. So that's probably why it's easy for us to relate to that concept, because they want to be healed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the weird thing is, demons become very human. They suddenly, when they lose their guard and they become meek and humble, you start to see they're really kind of spirit. They were wounded souls that just had awful things happen to them for often a very long time.
Right.
It's interesting being a guardian for the illumination works because these beings come in to people's appareos, and you talk to them. And if you are reading from a script, they're going to know your bullshit.
Right.
You have to really talk from your heart and be see the suffering, have great compassion. I mean, this is what I love about the dots. They're real Christians. Mm-hmm. They're not around pointing fingers and saying, this is the demon, that's the demon. Gays are the demonic thing. They're saying, oh, hey, brother, welcome home. You're here for your healing, and I tell them, the beings come in, and I'll often tell them, oh, man, I know, it's been hard for me, too.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me that beings like that wouldn't be overly righteous or pious or anything like that. They'd be more accepting, and they could pretty much hang out anywhere. They could be in the midst of anything and still have that characteristic.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's if you really want to illuminate your demons, non-judgment is just critical, because if you think you're the good one and they're the bad one, you've created the separation, and
right.
That's a wall. So, Jeffrey, some things I would say for you, though, because you probably don't have access to this, is, there are things like spirit releasement therapy, there's healers. None of this worked for me, but I think with my clients, because I have a healing practice, and I think it's complicated to do this, is you can learn to walk with it in a different way, so that when the anxiety comes, what I would do as an experiment is for a month, treat it as if it's not you. So treat it as if you're under attack, and then send it love. So if you get anxiety, send love. Stay firm. But don't think it's you for a month, and just see how it goes. Because often that's like the first critical step is discernment. For me, that was a big one. It's like, oh, these aren't my thoughts. This is somebody else's.
Right.
And once you do that, you're kind of in a more empowered center state so that you can protect yourself from the attack.
Okay, unfortunately, we're coming to the end. We have like 1 minute left, so I just wanted to make sure we got your links from you, Jonathan. It's been an excellent show. We'll definitely have to get you back again. I've enjoyed it a whole lot, and we go 2 hours, so we're at the end, and I got to end this bad boy. If you could, Jonathan, what's your website?
Well, I'll just close out here. First, I just want to thank you guys, Jeffrey. You also have great questions, good conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
We covered a lot of territory. I appreciate it. Web links, my site's down actually for the next month, so I'm getting a new one. But if you guys, I do run the Evolver Network. If you go to evolvernetwork.org, we have 50 regional groups that are creating the new communities that we're talking about. Also, I hope listeners will check out the Electric Jesus. I feel like you got a little bit of a download here, but for the full one, check out the book. And if you email me or contact me on Facebook and tell me that you bought the book because you heard about this program in particular, I'll give you a 25-minute chakra activation MP3. But you just need to tell me that it was from this program.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, we appreciate it, and thanks, Beazle. Want to say, Beazle will be coming back October 20th with Earl Lee from the Bodies of the Gods, Psychoactive Plants and Cults of the Dead. So it's about like cannibalism and drugs. So
Those pieces of guns and dynamite.
We keep meeting up for these cannibalism drug shows. No, I'm just kidding. But everybody check out churchofmabusradio.com for the weird UN stuff I was talking about. And it's been a great show from UFO Paranormal Radio Network. And we'll see you next Saturday with Ross Hamilton about the Serpent Mounds and Star Mounds. He's been on Ancient Aliens, so definitely going to be a fascinating show. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and thanks, Jonathan and Beazle. Thanks for a great show.
Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Right, take care.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Belonging to 323806142 is full and cannot accept new messages at this time. To leave a callback number, press 5, or please try again later.
What? Please tell me you're kidding me. It didn't ring?
Yeah, it rang. It just went to voicemail.
You didn't answer?
Yeah, it just went to voicemail.
That sucks. That'll suck. Let me see. You got three. Let me do a little intro, and then we'll start. Welcome to.
And I'm a writer, and I make short avant-garde films, mostly related to occult experiences that I've had. And I'm a musician, and I played in several different bands, like no-wave bands, more like avant-garde type noise bands. I have a band called Technicolor Skull, which is a collaboration with Kenneth Anger.
Cool, and what is the event that you have coming up pretty soon, too? It's an art event?
Yeah, it's an art event. It's a solo art exhibit, and I'm premiering my new film, which is called The Dove and the Serpent, which I shot in Normandy, France. And I'm creating these cubes, these magical cube sculptures, which will be in the space, and then there'll also be a performance at the opening.
Cool. What is, if you could tell us a bit about Lucifer, Story of a Cursed Film. I noticed that, and then there's an exclusive interview with one of the Manson family, Bobby Boucher, if I said that right. I'm from Georgia, so probably not. But we've had Adam Go Rightly on before about the Manson family, so I definitely find that fascinating. What about Lucifer Rising, or Raising Lucifer? Or Lucifer Rising?
Yeah.
Thanks here.
Yeah, that's Bobby Beausoleil from the Manson family. He is a very talented musician, an artist. He, I guess, he committed what could be considered the first of the Manson family murders. But he collaborated with Kenneth Anger before he met Charles Manson and started on this film called Lucifer Rising. This is in the late 60s, like 66 or 67. He had a falling out with Anger, and legend is that Anger cursed him and left San Francisco in a van, and it supposedly broke down in front of Spawn Ranch, and he got involved with the Manson family. And later in prison, after he was convicted of murder, recorded the soundtrack for Lucifer Rising. So Lucifer Rising took about 13 years to complete, and it has sort of a long series of bizarre coincidences and tragedies related to the production of that film.
Nice. Where can people find that film at? As far as
the Raising?
Yeah.
Raising Lucifer. Right now, it's not in distribution, so